What are we going to do about the epidemic in our country? According to some authorities, the United States is experiencing an epidemic, one that is costing thousands of lives each year. This epidemic is widespread and underaddressed. It affects most families, and most of those families affected don't know how to deal with it. And it's not COVID-19. It's anxiety. Anxiety and depression. And it's been getting more prevalent each year. For those who don't know, anxiety interrupts peace with a feeling of worry, nervousness, and uneasiness, while depression is a feeling of extreme unhappiness and lack of hope. While these definitions are clearly oversimplified, they do describe the despair that interrupts people's lives. And when despair rules, hope ends. God knows and frequently addresses the basic human need for hope. He often sent prophets to the Old Testament Jews to deliver messages of hope. One of the home cell groups here at Sonrise Fellowship have been surveying the Old Testament prophets and have found that for every declaration of judgment in the Old Testament, there's a corresponding message of hope. But is there a message of hope for us today? If there is, where is it? In Matthew 9, we meet several characters who have reached the point of despair, and Jesus turns that despair into hope. And understanding how will make this passage one that makes a difference. I'm Pastor Mike, and here at Scripture That Makes a Difference, we believe knowing Scripture makes a difference in our lives, and that it can make a difference in your life too. If you're new here, please click the subscribe button and check the description below for more information about this channel. And stick around to the end. I have a bonus insight that will add value to this video in your life. In Matthew chapter 9, Jesus has just called Matthew into ministry and has been answering a question raised by John the Baptist's disciples about fasting, when he's interrupted by a ruler. Now, Matthew assumes that his readers will know that this is a synagogue ruler, and he came into Jesus, interrupted his speech, knelt down, and made a request. He said, "My daughter has died, but please come and touch her, and she will be raised." To this, Jesus reacted. He rose from his sitting and followed the man to his home, and the other disciples followed Jesus. It might be fun to speculate what Matthew's thinking at this point, having just been called into ministry. While he's going, a woman interrupts the trip, a woman who's had an issue of blood. Now, that would have made her, given her all kinds of problems in her community and acceptability. And she's had this issue for about 12 years now. So she's been to the doctor. She's done everything that she can to overcome this. But she thought to herself, if I just come up behind Jesus and touch the fringe of his garment, then I'll be healed. And so she sneaks up behind him and touches him. And Jesus immediately turns around and instead of scolding her or trying to drive her away, reassures her that her faith has made her well. Shortly after this, the group arrives at the synagogue ruler's home and find that the daughter has passed and that the professional mourners have already arrived. The experts in death are giving their declaration that she's beyond help. Jesus tries to move them out of the way so that he can do his ministry, but to this they laugh. They can't imagine that this teacher would know more than they do about death, especially when he uses phrases like, she's not dead but asleep, trying to indicate that this condition isn't permanent. So he goes into the room, he touches her, and without saying a word, now that's Matthew's presentation, Mark and Luke have him saying something to her, but in Matthew's presentation he doesn't say a word, and she arose. She awoke. She was resurrected. Now, what I want you to note in these three stories is that there are three interruptions. The synagogue ruler interrupts Jesus' speech, the woman interrupts the trip, and the young lady interrupts a funeral. And in all three cases, Jesus interrupts despair. And so if we want to restore hope, we need to look for Jesus. He is the giver of hope when despair rules. Now, I promised you a bonus insight near the end, and here it comes. It's really more of a broader understanding. It is true that all of us sometimes feel our hope slipping away. And we can turn to prayer and find encouragement in Christian fellowship and get through it. But others have a deeper, more relentless despair. And the medical diagnosis of depression is a biochemical depression that comes from a chemical imbalance. And this will not submit to the normal form of spiritual warfare we commonly experience as Christians. In those times, Christians should not feel forgotten by God. He's remembered, and He's still gracious. He, in His wisdom and grace, has provided in our culture the medicine to correct those imbalances. Just as He has provided food to meet our need for nourishment, He has provided medicine for our imbalances. If a doctor advises medication and counsel for despair, the follower of Jesus should see this as God's gracious provision for the need, not something to feel ashamed of. You're unique from other believers, and God has provided for that uniqueness. In short, take your meds. And if one appropriately takes advantage of the grace of God in fellowship, encouragement, and even medication, then hope returns, just as it did for the ruler, the woman, and the daughter. And that's how this is Scripture that makes a difference. And if you agree, I hope you'll subscribe, especially if you'd like more of this content. And click the bell to get notified when it arrives. I'd love it if you leave comments. I appreciate all forms of comments. Let me know if you agree or disagree or have had any experiences that might help others. You may have questions, and I hope you'll put those in the comments. I'll get back to those just as fast as I can. Make suggestions on topics that might help you or that you might be concerned about. Techniques for the presentation. I'm always open to adjusting the presentation so that the message is more receivable by your friends. I'm open to all kinds of suggestions. And if you live anywhere near Enid, Oklahoma, I hope you'll consider visiting Sonrise Fellowship. You can find the information on our service times and our address on our Facebook page. The link is below. Until next time, may you continue to experience the life-changing difference of Scripture.